Hello and welcome in. It is a special edition Always College Football. We don't often do this for coordinator moves, but in this instance, we felt as though it was necessary. Alabama offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien has officially taken the offensive coordinator position with the New England Patriots. This now leaves two vacancies at the moment with Alabama in both coordinator spots. It's on the heels, of course, of Pete Golding just last week leaving Tuscaloosa for Oxford, Mississippi to become the coordinator for the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, people throughout the state of Alabama have rejoiced, citing that Pete Golding and Bill O'Brien, for that matter, are the reason why Alabama came up short in each of the last two seasons. Coming up short for Alabama, by their standards, is, of course, winning the national championship. But if we look back, several have cited the fact that Bill O'Brien has struggled in the red zone. Bill O'Brien has struggled to try to create a consistent run game, all these other things. Y'all, Bill O'Brien was the coordinator of the Crimson Tide in 2021, a season that saw Bryce Young throw for nearly 5,000 yards, or account for nearly 5,000 yards, 47 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. You name it, they did it, with two great wide receivers on the perimeter. And couple that with somewhat inconsistent offensive line. I think he did more with less than what some of the previous coordinators have done. Look back and people speak glowingly about Steve Sarkisian's tenure. Well, Steve Sarkisian had a Heisman Trophy winning Heisman Trophy winning wide receiver, a all-time great quarterback, obviously, in Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones. When you look at consistent performance and quarterback rating, you might disagree with how you feel about Mac Jones and all that. Fine. I'm just suggesting, statistically speaking, ridiculous performance. Well, people have also said, but at least with Sark, you aired the ball out. I feel like it's dink and dunk. Do you realize that in the last 2 years, in 2021 and 2022, Alabama actually averaged more air yards per attempt than they did in 2020 and in 2019? Those are the 2 years under Steve Sarkisian. So everyone that's kind of come out of the woodwork in and around the state of Alabama, people suggesting that Steve Sarkisian was so much better than Bill O'Brien, all these other things, fine. Feel how you want to feel. I think Bill O'Brien had a bit of an underrated tenure. People have cited, well, look at his end-of-game situational awareness. Look at the game against Tennessee. If he would have just run the ball those final few plays, then it wouldn't have given Tennessee an opportunity to throw it and eventually kick the game-winning field goal. Y'all, do you realize that drive started in Alabama's territory, and the way that they got into field goal range was by throwing the football? And if one of the players on the team, arguably the best offensive player not named Bryce Young, if one of the best players on the team would have made a catch, a very catchable ball it might seem, then the game might be totally different. And to blame the offensive coordinator for a loss when you score 49 points, to me, feels a little bit reactionary. Now, here's where I think this is beneficial for Alabama. I'm not going to sit here and say that, hey, man, give the guy a gold jacket. Bill O'Brien's one of the greatest coordinators of all time. I'm not suggesting that. I think it was probably in both parties' best interest, both Bill O'Brien's and in Alabama's, to potentially go their separate ways. I think Bill O'Brien's probably a little bit more fond of the professional game. And I think Alabama could, especially looking at where the game is going, could maybe bring in some of the offensive techniques that have been very successful in other places, a la Tennessee, maybe even in Ole Miss with Jeff Lebby, if that's the direction they end up going, or that's the guy that they end up bringing in, whatever it may be. You get the sense that maybe Alabama could use a little bit of a shot in the arm with what they're doing offensively. Either way, I don't really like the way that Bill O'Brien's been portrayed. I think he did a really solid job at Alabama. I think he was dealt a difficult hand this past year when they had really unreliable wide receiver play and inconsistent offensive line play, and an offensive line that really couldn't control the line of scrimmage the way previous renditions of Alabama's offensive line could. So I think Bill O'Brien is going to do a great job with Mac Jones, the New England Patriots. Very excited for him to get back to a place that he's very comfortable And this now gives Nick Saban the opportunity to bring in someone else that maybe could bring the Alabama offense into a new era as we move forward. You think to the defensive side. Now, Pete Golding, much has been made of his tenure and the regression that is experienced under Pete Golding's watch. Now, I don't necessarily subscribe to those ideals. You look at the numbers, statistically speaking, against the run, all these other things, Pete Golding did a fairly adequate job. One thing you could say about Pete Golding is that, yes, there were times in big games his teams got torched. Maybe he put a little bit too much on the plate of some of the defenders on a week-to-week basis. But for all intents and purposes, he was a relentless recruiter and did a pretty good job in his time at the University of Alabama. It will be difficult to replace him, especially on the recruiting trail. But ultimately, I think it's best for him to maybe go somewhere where he can get a fresh start, because he was obviously under so much fire and under so much pressure as the defensive coordinator in Tuscaloosa the last handful of years. It's weird to see both coordinators open at a school that's likely to start, at worst, top 5 in the rankings next year. What I will say, though, defensive coordinator doesn't turn over quite as much in Tuscaloosa. Pete Golding's been there for a handful of years. Jeremy Pruitt has been there, obviously, in the past. Kirby Smart before that. There have been a handful of guys on the defensive side, but seldom does that position really turn over with a lot of regularity. However, on the offensive side, this is now going to be the 6th offensive coordinator hired by Nick Saban in the last 8 years. A couple guys have been one and dones. Now, they've all gotten jobs. Brian Daboll eventually got a job with the Buffalo Bills and parlayed that into a job with the New York Giants, where he is now the head coach. Mike Locksley, there for 1 year, went to become the head coach of the Maryland Terrapins. Steve Sarkisian there for 2 years, now, of course, the head coach of the Texas Longhorns. So this has been a great launching pad for whoever takes the job, at least in years past. We can go all the way back to Jim McElroy, who became the head coach at Colorado State after the 2011 season. So this has been a launching pad of sorts for several coaches in the industry in recent years. So, Nick Saban will do a great job of identifying possible direction that he wants to take the team in. And you got to think whoever gets the job will be in line to potentially get a big gig down the road. So that'll do it for us as we look at the Alabama coaching staff as of right now. The program's still in very solid footing. It's not really that unusual to have a lot of turnover within the staff. It happens almost annually when you look at what goes on in Tuscaloosa. That'll do it for us here on a special edition of Always College Football. For Mark Kubiak, Jack Foster, I'm Greg McElroy. We hope you have a wonderful day. Keep it locked in here on Always College Football for more news, more notes, and more reaction to all the moves that continue to go on in the coaching carousel. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.